Okay, so it's time for my review of Pierce Brosnan's second outing as 007 in Tomorrow Never Dies. Now, the director this time was Roger Spottiswoode, who was known for very few films, so it was a bit of a surprise that he was chosen as director of the film. And Tomorrow Never Dies is notable for a number of script rewrites whilst the film was in production, which is never a great thing. Pierce Brosnan has mentioned over time that Tomorrow Never Dies was a very weak and sort of uncontrolled follow-up to his debut, Goldeneye. I'd never think that in any reviews that Pierce Brosnan particularly likes his second outing as Bond. Whereas I have to disagree. I have to say that Pierce Brosnan looks more the part in Tomorrow Never Dies from the moment that he sort of holds out a lighter for somebody in the Arms Bazaar at the top of the film. He and the way he just punches the guy and says "filthy habit." It's great. You kind of want to give a cheer, really. That's why I particularly like the pre-title sequence for Tomorrow Never Dies. I think it's very gutsy, it's action-packed. It really sets the tone of the scene very well. And not only do you have Brosnan's Bond in action, but you also have a sort of the dialogue between M and a new character, Robinson, played by Colin Salmon, who at one point was considered to be a successor for Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. I think he'd be terrific, personally. And I think we should embrace the fact one day that there could be a black James Bond. There's no problem, in my opinion, with that. But anyway, we're going off on a bit of a tangent. So Tomorrow Never Dies, for me, has a strong pre-credit sequence, lots of action, very action-heavy. It's a good start to the film. Following, once again, Daniel Kleinman's update on the gun barrel, we have a more traditional Bond sound. It was kind of synthetic for Goldeneye, but it's very, very traditional rendition of Monty Norman's James Bond theme playing over the gun barrel, and we launch into the title sequence. Not as good a opening credits sequence from Daniel Kleinman as it was for Goldeneye, but this is based around the media, so it's smashing television screens, lots of glass, lots of distorted images. It's quite a clever idea. It's a clever motif for the opening credits sequence, but it's not as strong as his one for Goldeneye, in my opinion. And we also have a song which isn't quite as strong either, from Cheryl Cole to Cheryl Cole. Sorry, not Cheryl Cole. Cheryl Crow, almost right. For Tomorrow Never Dies. Now, the song which actually features on the end of the film from K.D. Lang, Surrender, I think personally would have been a better song choice, and I think that's the opinion of many of the fans as well. But I think it was felt that K.D. Lang wasn't as well known and commercially as successful as Cheryl Crow around the time of the film's release. So they decided in the end to go with Cheryl Crow. I believe that Jarvis Cocker submitted a song for Bond with Pulp for 1997 for Tomorrow Never Dies, but in the end they decided to go with Cheryl Crow, which is fine. So we end this pre-credit sequence, again another long one. It's about 8 or 9 minutes, I think, just around the same amount of time length as Goldeneye, and we launch straight into the film. We are introduced to Guts Otto, who plays Stamper, who is the villain's henchman. Again, another stronger henchman than the main villain. Elliot Carver is the main villain, but he gets all of his heavies and all of his henchmen to do everything for him. Jonathan Pryce is actually quite a weak villain in the James Bond series. I've never particularly liked him. It's all talk. I know that's the point of the character because he's a media baron, but it is very much all talk and no play with Elliot Carver. We also have Henry Gupta as well, who we saw, another of Carver's associates, played by Ricky Jay, who gets real cameos in the film. He appears in the pre-credit sequence and he spies on Bond's conversation with Paris during Carver's media launch party. And yeah, again, they're very minor characters. Somebody who does work on Carver's payroll is Dr. Kaufman, though, who's played magnificently by Vincent Schiavelli. It's a lovely little sequence, and it's one of the standouts in the film, in my opinion. It's has just the right amount of comedy in it, and it's obviously a somber moment because Bond has just found Paris, Terry Hatcher, dead in his hotel room, because Paris is married to Elliot Carver, the film's villain, and Paris has betrayed her husband by sleeping with Bond. So, of course, she has to die very quickly. So Dr. Kaufman is teasing with Bond, but Bond gets the upper hand in a very nice, but actually too short a sequence in the film. It would have been nicer if it was a little longer. For the Allies, Jack Wade returns to assist Bond in a very short scene, once again, in this film. What's the point of the character? There is no point. No point at all. So, again, it seems a very pointless, mundane kind of character, really. We have Judi Dench back as M, very authoritative from the pre-credits sequence. We don't see a huge amount of her for the rest of the film. She does sort of debrief Bond, asking him how much he knows about Elliot Carver in a sequence earlier in the film. But and she also gets reunited with Jeffrey Palmer, actually, as well, who plays Admiral Roebuck in the film. Of course, the two of them work together on their television series as time goes by, comedy series in the UK. But they are reunited here, and they're kind of they're very prickly towards each other. She says to Admiral Roebuck, he actually says to her, "I don't think you've got the balls for this job," and she says, "Perhaps, but at least I don't have to think with them all the time." It's very much two heads in their profession going up against each other. There's some great action sequences in Tomorrow Never Dies, which should be applauded. A motorbike chase, which obviously is trying to rival the tank chase sequence in Goldeneye, and it is very good. It's a good sequence, works very well, and it showcases some great action in the film, some great stunt work, and we're forgetting to mention at the moment Michelle Yeoh, who plays Wei Lin, a great ally for Bond in the film, one of the strongest of the female leads in a Pierce Brosnan James Bond, in one of the more recent ones. She is a great match for Bond, and she commits to the character very, very well in the film, I must say. Slightly weaker of the women is Paris. Obviously, Paris Carver is supposed to be an old fling of Bond's, and we kind of get that message, but she's used so briefly in the film's running time that she doesn't make the impact that she should. There's a sequence where she goes to Bond's hotel room and Bond's waiting there, sort of pours himself a martini, sort of puts his gun on the side of the table. It's kind of reminds you of the classiness of when Sean Connery was waiting for Professor Dent to turn up at Miss Tarot's house in the first Bond film, in Dr. No. So Tomorrow Never Dies has lots of credit to its name. It is a good film. I think personally it's a strong film for Brosnan. I think he looks the part much more so in this film than he did in Goldeneye. But I can see why people say that it is too action heavy. It does kind of launch into, by the end, it kind of becomes like your very average action film. It's Bond kind of running around this stealth ship with a machine gun. It doesn't seem quite Bondian enough in the finale of the film. So certainly the first half of the film is stronger than the second. But as a whole, I enjoy Tomorrow Never Dies. I think it's a good film. I think it's a strong outing for Pierce Brosnan's James Bond. And of course we have David Arnold with the score for the film this time. The first of his, just trying to think, first of his 5 Bond scores to date. He's scored the 3 of the Pierce Brosnan films and the first 2 Daniel Craig James Bond films as well, Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. And he brings back a John Barry sound. He obviously alludes to John Barry's work, and there are some great cues, some great action cues on David Arnold's soundtrack for Tomorrow Never Dies. It feels fresh. It feels like a new James Bond sound, and David Arnold's work was recommended to the Bond producers by John Barry himself. So, you know, what better recommendation could you ask for? And it's a huge improvement on Eric Serra's very experimental work on Goldeneye, in my opinion. So, all in all, I enjoy Tomorrow Never Dies. It's one of the more watchable James Bond films, and it's slightly under 2 hours as well. So it's a nice runtime. It's, you know, not too hard on the bum when you're sitting down and watching the film. And the film actually did very well at the box office, considering the fact that it was released at the end of 1997, exactly the same month as Titanic was released. So you know, James Cameron's mammoth Titanic, which you know is still the biggest film of all time. So considering it was released with, you know, with that competition at the box office, Tomorrow Never Dies did fantastically well, and in my opinion, is a worthy successor to Goldeneye. It's a very different film to Goldeneye, but both stand up very well, in my opinion, as James Bond films. Okay, so we approach James Bond in a very different way, with a brand new director and a different kind of take on Bond. It's more down-to-earth approach in the next film, The World Is Not Enough. So James Bond will return.